Hello, friends. Welcome to this brand new cricket podcast, which is the brainchild of two cricketing enthusiasts, myself, Pavan, based out of Vancouver here in Canada, and my friend RaviTeja, based out of Hyderabad in India. Just to give you a background, both of us have known each other for quite some time now and have our respective opinions on the game that we love so much. And we thought it would be a good idea to start a podcast of our own and put it out there on the online platforms and also seek opinions of the millions of lovers of the game that we have. We are absolutely not the gospel truth on all the happenings of the game and are just going to give our perspective with respect to what we view as cricketing enthusiasts and would also like to hear from you guys going ahead as well. So we would need your support in our endeavor of such a magnitude as well. I would like to extend my warm welcome to my friend Ravi Teja from Hyderabad in India. Hi, Ravi. How are you doing today?
Hi, Pavan Bhaiya. All well, pretty good. Lovely intro. Just a thought here. We're just here to talk out whatever is on our head in terms of the way the game is functioning now, or probably what's in store for the next 2 weeks. And it could be match previews, it could be uh, match reviews, it could be probably any insider info or whatnot, any controversial issue discussion as well. So just here to kind of speak our hearts out, and of course, looking forward to this new pursuit, I'd say, Pawan Bhaiya. And thanks for this intro as well.
Absolutely. I mean, the world has gone through traumatic times in the last 1 year or so, and so has the sporting world and more so the cricketing world. And we were all happy to see some play out there in the cricket arena since the last summer in England. And what better way to start off the new year when we had one of the greatest Test series victories achieved by India in the history of the game. And we thought that that would be an apt topic for us to begin as far as our podcast is concerned. So, just to let our viewers know that our podcast episodes are going to be short and crisp, not extending beyond half an hour or so. And we're going to talk to point clearly and concisely on a set agenda and wrap it up, try to wrap it up between that time which I mentioned, so that you also are able to, spend quality time listening to our podcast. So we thought to start off with, we can just have a review of India's tour down under um, 2020-21 season, and some of the points that we listed down that we would speak about in episode one are, you know, how this can be ranked as one of greatest test victories in the history of cricket, not only Indian cricket, and we'll take it as it comes. So the first point which we wanted to discuss, and I would like to hear from Ravi, if he considers this to be India's greatest ever Test series victory till date, um, and you can voice your opinion on that, Ravi.
Sure. Firstly, you started off saying, it has been a traumatic year. Of course, I'd like to also send my prayers to someone in trauma currently, that is Tim Payne, who's probably sitting down in Tasmania. Certainly, yes. And of course, you know, greatest test series win. Okay, I hope, of course, I'm very sure Sunny G is not listening to us. But having said that, I'd say certainly yes. At least probably what I've definitely watched in my probably last 20 years of, watching cricket. 1971 Tour of West Indies, Sunny G's debut series. Of course, that's not something that I've definitely witnessed. I've heard tons of tales from my uncle, who used to constantly tell me how they used to listen to it in the radio back then in Madras and whatnot. But having said that, I would definitely say this is the best Test series victory. Followed by a close second would be my personal favorite, the one all series. I mean, of course, Border Gavaskar Trophy back in 2003 and 4. And my third best would definitely be Pakistan Tour in 2004, which we won to 1. Uh, the India tour of Australia, which we won in back in 2018, uh, maybe is about fourth or fifth. Of course, I don't want to digress further, but this is how I kind of rate it. This is our top victory for many reasons. It's not just because it's a serious victory down under. It's also because we've been bruised, we've been battered, we've been hit, we've been assaulted, whatnot. With the way we managed to, with the way we played at Adelaide and the way we managed to win Melbourne, how we kind of escaped Sydney, and the way we breached Gabba. I think it is not two ways there. I personally think this is the favorite. This is my Test series favorite. Across the game. It necessarily doesn't mean not just as a Indian cricketing fan, but also as a pure cricket lover. I'd say this is one of the best series that was ever played. India A did really well. Then India B also did really well. Whatnot. So yeah, that's how I personally see it. What's your view, Pawan Bhai? What do you feel?
I would have to agree with you on that, Ravi. Although there have been many milestones in our Test cricketing history, to say the least, which started off with that first overseas Test victory in 1967-68 in New Zealand, where we won 3-1 under the captaincy of Mansur Ali Khan Pataudi. And we have not achieved that feat of winning more than two tests in a Sena country from that time on. And then 4 years later, we had those twin Test series victories in West Indies and England in
That's right.
1971 under Ajit Wadekar. And it's hard to believe we are celebrating 50th anniversary of those victories this year. And then we had the Test series victory in England in 1986, which we won 2-0, pretty much dominated that whole series. And I, being a person who was born in the late 80s and then started to watch a lot of Test cricket in the 90s, which were a very barren period for Indian Test cricket, where we did not win anything for the best part of that decade overseas. And then
Mhm.
post 2000, once Saurav Ganguly and John Wright came into the equation, we started winning more frequently overseas. Um, and considering all the things that we had going against us in this tour, firstly, being in that biobubble environment is tough enough for players. Followed by all the kind of injuries, as you mentioned, that we were faced with virtually our 6 to 7 first choice 11 players missing out, and the players
Mhm.
then stepping up, um, and then also having these rants going on from the Aussies that last time in 2018-19 you won because a certain David Warner and Stephen Smith were not there, and you did not play at the Gabba, so on and so forth, and you don't like to play a day-night test match. And it was interesting to see Tim Payne at exactly 6 or 7 months before the series coming out and saying, well, if Virat is interested and the BCCI is interested, we would like to go ahead and play the ping ball test, and you would have to ask them. So we played the ping ball test. We played at the Gabba. Australia won tosses in 3 of the 4 test matches and liked what they liked doing, batting first and putting the runs on the board, and having the opposition trying to save the game or win the game in the fourth innings. And taking all these things into consideration, and considering we are playing a fully fit and a first choice Australian Test 11, and to beat them in their own den, virtually leaving them with no excuse at this point of time, I would definitely put this victory right up there in the cricketing history of Indian Test cricket. And as you mentioned, some of the other series, nobody can forget the 2001 series between both these teams, although it was played in India, but it was played on very
Mhm.
sporting pitches. So that is another series that caught our imagination. And I personally felt that that was a eureka moment for me as a 14-year-old back in 2001, where I, opened my eyes to Test cricket more advertently and started following this purest form of the game, and came to understand this was the pinnacle of our sport that we love. So definitely, with due respect to all the great achievements that our cricketers in the past have done in the various formats of the game, of course, we're talking about Test cricket only now. I think that this has to be the jewel in the crown of Indian Test cricket, and I think for years to come they'll be talking about these series. Like we have been hearing from our parents and our grandparents regarding those victories in the 60s and 70s, the World Cup in 83, and so on and so forth. In the
Mhm.
future, I'm sure that when we have discussions with our kids, we will tell them that there was a team that went down under in 2020-21 season and did something magical.
Absolutely. And I think I can't agree more. Absolutely. Very well put. Uh, Now, I'd like to ask you something else on this. Okay, this is the top series victory that you personally would rate it highest. Okay, what else do you think? I mean, would you rate the New Zealand series under MS Dhoni to be equally successful, if not, if of course not equally, if not maybe lesser? But having said that, what do you think about the New Zealand series victory that we had in 2008? Where would you rate it? How important is it for you as well?
It is also one of the most important Test series victories. I think that was the only second series that we won in New Zealand after that initial victory in 67-68. And it absolutely blows my mind to think that in 1967-68, we won that series 3-1 on the back of our spinners, Erapalli Prasanna, Beatty, and Chandrasekhar,
Mhm.
bowling on those kind of pitches in New Zealand. And those were uncovered wickets at that point of time. But with respect to your question on the series in 2009, I think that was the only series that MS Dhoni won in a Sena country, if I'm not wrong. And I think that also has to be one of the top series win that we have had in our cricketing history, especially overseas. I still believe we could have won that series at least 2-1.
Two one. That's right.
That last test match in Wellington, I think MS Dhoni got very conservative and batted on for a tad bit longer and set a target of more than 500 for New Zealand, whereas 400 would have been sufficient. And then the weather intervened. And also considering the way that we played in that second test match in Napier, where Gautam Gambhir virtually batted for 2 days to save the game for us when we were following on. And we had that fantastic victory in the first test at Hamilton. I definitely think that prior to the series that we won in Australia in 2018, 2019, that was the only Test series victory, if I'm not wrong, in a Sena country in the last 20 odd years after 2000. Although we have been going and competing well in the Sena countries, winning a test match in almost every series, but we would not, kick on and win multiple test matches in a series, wherein you at least required to win a couple of test matches to win the series or to stay on an even keel. We've had a pretty abysmal record in England in the last 10 years or so. After we won in 2007, I think we have
Seven.
been
That's right. Yeah.
losing very, very badly in England, and we'll have a chance to redeem ourselves later this year. But I think, yes, that series victory in 2009 definitely um, stands out if we talk about our overseas performances.
Certainly, yes, I totally agree. Uh, of course, I mean, the New Zealand tour definitely. I mean, as an MS Dhoni fanboy, I definitely had to get that. Don't you think so? Uh, Having said that, in that very New Zealand tour as well, we did have Sehwag also captaining one of the game, if I'm not wrong. I think which ended as a draw, if I'm not wrong. And again, 2007 is one of the most refreshing memory, I'd say. Of course, we were the weather did help us quite a bit. Having said that, that's one memory probably which I would always think of and say, okay, this was one amazing series that we had. The previous series ended up not necessarily in our favor, but of course we did have a lot of success in terms of the white ball cricket. But yeah, in the open era, I personally think the 2007 series win under Rahul Dravid was also one of the biggest achievements as well. But we've been talking now about a lot of achievements that we've had in the last few years. So I personally want to also discuss about the change in terms of the way Indians have been approaching the game as well. Uh, Mainly in terms of attitude, mainly in terms of the approach, and what else do you think is actually working in our favor that is really improving the way we've been trying to fight it out even under Virat. If you see, we've been fighting it out even in South Africa, though we lost 2-1. Even in England, though we lost by a significant margin, we've been trying to fight it out under Virat against all other teams across, even if we're traveling. Of course, I remember the Adelaide test back in 2014. We were supposed to win that game, of course, didn't end up in our favor. Also the tests in England, wherein KL played really well, Rishabh played really well. This was in 2017. There's one, some amount of change in terms of attitude as well. Do you think that's because of the advent of T20, wherein you're actually playing positive cricket, or there's some amount of mental mindset that actually is kicking in of these, within these players, that's allowing them to believe and say, okay, no, we're going to go to it.
That's a good question that you ask, Ravi. Before I just get on to that, regarding the 2007 series win in England, I think it's a very monumental milestone in the history of Indian Test cricket, because if you remember earlier in that same year, we were knocked out of the World Cup at the first round, and it was a pretty low ebb for Indian cricket, and we had the Greg Chappell era, and he was sacked, and then the team virtually had no coach. I remember Ravi Shastri was asked to take care of that team, and Chandu Borde was brought on board as the manager. And just for the senior players to get that group together, along with the youngsters that were there, and go on and win that series was a fantastic achievement. And seldom does Rahul Dravid get credited for the way he captained the country. In the previous year, in 2006, we won a series in Caribbean as well, for the first time in 35 years. Although the West Indies team of that time was not same as what it used to be,
That's
but
so true.
definitely the 2007 series has to be one of the standouts as well. And coming to your next question, um, um, we can say there has been a substantial shift in the way that the Indian team has gone about its test match cricket, especially when playing overseas. We have always been strong at home. And as I mentioned, that post 2000, we have played overseas and started winning as well. But we always had the batting arsenal with us to perform in overseas conditions. We had the Fab Five in our top six in the batting lineup always, who would put up runs on the board. But the way that our pace attack was, based around just one or two bowlers, was proving to be our Achilles heel, and we were just not getting that final push. And when we had the opposition on mat, we were just not finishing them off, and just leaving that leeway for them to get back into the game. And of course, you wouldn't expect your spinners to come into the game very early overseas and stamp their authority over the game and help us win those matches. When we move across to the Kohli era of captaincy, and this is not to discredit the Indian captains before him, because you make use of the resources that you have at your disposal. And Kohli also has been blessed with a well-rounded pace attack, probably the best pace attack we have had in our history. And as I mentioned, if a Ganguly had only a Srinath or a Zaheer Khan at his disposal, and Dhoni had a half-fit Ishant Sharma, or some of these guys, Irfan Pathan, Srishant, who would not go on to play for longer periods of time and could not sustain
Hmm.
themselves. It was not the captain's fault, but he has had I mean, when I say he, it's Virat Kohli over here. He has made a concerted effort on getting a strong pace attack and basing the core of his team around a strong pace attack. And if you see the last couple of series that we have played at home as well, against South Africa and albeit Bangladesh as well, we have played on true pitches, and we have won with our pace attack at home as well.
Absolutely.
The only time we have struggled at home, and I was reading a stat a couple of days ago, since that last test series loss at home against England in 2012, the staggering
Hmm.
date is that India has just lost one test match at home since that 2012-2013
Absolutely.
series, and it was against
The Pune test
Australia.
against Australia, if I'm not
Yeah,
wrong.
the
Yeah,
Pune test against Australia. And if you see the
that's
two
so true.
test matches we lost against England at home in 2012, we played on ranked turners, and that Pune test also was played on an underprepared wicket. So once you have those ranked turners in place, you bring substandard opposition spinners into the play as well. You can't imagine somebody like a Steve O'Keefe getting 6 wickets in each innings if it was a true pitch.
Absolutely.
Um, so, and of course, we all remember the kind of pitches that were dished out in that 2015 series against South Africa, which were abysmal to watch. Even though India was winning, but as a cricket fan, I hated watching that series where matches were finishing between 2.5 to 3 days, and even Indian batsmen were struggling batting against the likes of Simon Harmer and all these guys, who would not pick up a wicket or a 5 wicket haul if it was a proper pitch laid out. So I think having that kind of attitude of developing their focus on a well-rounded pace attack has reaped rich dividends for the Indian uh, test team. I feel that spirit, that killer instinct, has always been there across all the teams. It would be a discredit to all those teams if we said that that was not existent earlier. But just that having a well-rounded pace attack and focus of Virat Kohli, Ravi Shastri, and the think tank to have these pool of bowlers up and firing whenever they want, has proven to be the deciding factor, is what I feel. Um, because if you see the great teams of the past, the West Indies team, they won all across the globe. The Australian team won across
Mhm.
the globe. It was on back of a strong pace attack and the backups that they had. And that series victory in Australia now is purely evident. You lose your first choice bowling attack, Shami, no Ishant Sharma, no Jasprit Bumrah later on in the series, and you virtually had your A attack or B attack. And because they have come up through the ranks, through the system, they are battle hardened and they are ready for the rigors of international cricket. So they don't come and start adjusting to the highest level of the game. They start performing, in fact, right from the outset. So I feel that has been the deciding factor and the difference. We have always had the batting, that's there. And another thing, our ground fielding has improved a lot uh, due to the effect that T20 and one day cricket has had. I think we have had the most fittest side in the history of Indian cricket in the current lot. A lot, uh, what you call, is left to be desired as far as their catching in the slips and close in fielding positions is concerned. That can improve over a period of time. But I think having a well-rounded pace attack, improved efficiency with respect to fitness, are a couple of the key factors that I believe that has changed the way that the Indian cricketers view um, the modern game. And one final thing is Virat Kohli also has made clear in uncertain terms in this era and day and age of various T20 leagues and various white ball tournaments going across the world that this team gives paramount importance to Test cricket, and that is so heartening to see. Because growing up, every individual now wants to play either the IPL. They don't want to play for the state 20 side. They just want to play for the IPL, get a mega buck deal, and then be settled for life. But this group of players, when a lot of youngsters would have seen this series, they would have seen this is what cricket is all about. And because this team has put this cricket on the highest pedestal, I think that has also changed the view of many people. And many domestic cricketers would now, want to aspire to play the purest format of the game.
Absolutely, yes. So actually, I think there's this about 10 to 12 year period wherein I personally think the importance to Test cricket has been diminishing, largely because of the way West Indies has been playing, perhaps. Sri Lankan legends being, retiring, and of course, Pakistan not really playing at their fullest capacity, or probably they've not been able to actually dig up players and so on and so forth. Uh, Having said that, what I also felt was while we'll definitely do a segment separately with respect to how Test cricket, do you actually think the Test cricket has been revived after this very series? What I personally feel is to actually ensure a balance in terms of the way people are glued to Test cricket. It's very important uh, for teams to actually play competitive cricket, not just at home and also at away. uh, I totally agree with you. I mean, the South Africa tour back in 2014-15 and also the Aussie whitewash 2013, while it's definitely an achievement, uh, it did necessarily prove a point that saying that, probably we can prepare rank turners and, treat you well, be it at Hyderabad, which pretty much finished in 3.5 days, and be it in Chennai, wherein MS got a 220. If we, of course, we did whitewash, but do we look back and say, okay, it's been one amazing series? Not necessarily. Same probably with Australians who don't necessarily remember our 2011 series where Clark got some 330 odd runs in the test in an innings and whatnot. So it's very important for for the game to live, it's important for teams to perform well across overseas or even at home. Prepare sporting pitches. Like you rightly pointed out, we were able to actually do well with our pace attack. Despite not necessarily being ranked earners. Uh, so this I think these are few factors that would really be very important in addition to just uh, uh, having a result. Okay, so we see that back in 2010s or 2000s, we did see a lot of games which necessarily did not fetch a result. People tend to lose some amount of interest. They tend to drift towards ODI cricket or T20 cricket and so on and so forth. So uh, this is a systematic, probably the way the game can be improved. Of course, I don't think hampering the structure, hampering the format would necessarily help it, but it's very important for uh, playing probably, if not uh, one-sided conditions, at least in some amount of neutral conditions as well. No one really likes those green tracks of New Zealand or even ranked turners of Chennai that we're going to see shortly. So we'll probably discuss that in detail again in another segment. But I just quickly like to go towards, probably take up another topic about heroes of the tour. Okay, what uh, three names? Okay, three names from you, and it need not necessarily be the obvious ones. Probably it can be someone who just played a game as well. But who do you think are your three heroes? And then I'll kind of take it up as well.
Yeah, I mean, this has been that kind of a tour where we have had multiple heroes. And one of the reasons why this tour will be remembered for long is the contributions that multiple members in this team have, dished out towards India winning the series. Unlike the last time in 2018-19, where, Pujara was mainly the difference between both the sides. But if I had to just pick three people, considering the paucity of time that we have as well, I would say Mohammad Siraj. He was the leading wicket taker for India in the series. And I have just a bit of soft corner, as I think you might also have, since he comes from our part of the world, Hyderabad.
Absolutely,
Um,
certainly yes.
but more importantly, considering the kind of personal tragedy that he had to go through of losing his father, which is a big,
So
big
true.
loss and an irreparable loss, which can never be, covered by anything in your life. And then not having the opportunity to, have a look at his father one final time and take part in his final rites, having the gumption to remain back in Australia, and then when you get your chance, do your debut in MCG, which can be pretty intimidating
Absolutely.
for a non-Australian player, and the way that he performed in the series. And two test matches into the series, he wakes up and somebody tells him that now you have to lead this Indian bowling attack. Now you're no longer a third seamer or just part of the seam attack. You've got to lead this seam attack. And the way he performed, and that last 5 wicket haul in the second innings at the Gabba was just the icing on the cake and very well deserved. And I think he'll be more at home once uh, the test matches against England begin, and we will get to see his skill in full force as well. So for me, he was one. Um, the second, I would say, would be Shubman Gill. I think we have one player in for the ages now. I mean, I've watched a lot of Test cricket in the last 20 to 25 years, but the kind of balance that Shubman has on the crease is something fantastic. And when I say balance, people sometimes do not understand this terminology. It's just, uh, you know, uh, catching the length of the ball that bit early and knowing when to play on the front foot and on the back foot. And the way he handled Stark, Hazelwood, and Cummins on those pitches was a sight to behold. He's a very confident young man who plays with shots. Of course, everybody has their technical flaws, and more he plays, he's going to develop his game.
Absolutely.
And I don't know what his flaws, but I think we have one in for the next 10, 15 years, and he should be making his way into the white ball squads as well sometime later on. And I think he'll be the fulcrum of the Indian batting in the next 10, 15 years once the likes of, Kohli, Pujara hang up their boots. So Shubman Gill was the second player for me. And the third player for me would be Ajinkya Rahane. I mean, he's been one of my most favorite players right from the time he's made his debut. It's very hard to think that he had to sit out 17 test matches as part of the reserve players carrying out drinks before he eventually got his chance to make debut against Australia in that 2013 series in Delhi. Just for the way he carried himself, we all knew that he's going to be the captain of this team after that pink ball test match once Kohli leaves. But just
Mhm.
to, and I think the turnaround started with his innings in Melbourne. Once we went out to Melbourne, he cut out all the noise and mentioned to his team that we're going to treat this as a three-match series. We are going to play all these three matches with the red ball now. So forget the pink ball test match. It's done and dusted. One bad hour cost us that test match. And the game was pretty much in the balance when he came out to bat. And in fact, Australia were in the front when he came out to bat in that first innings in the Boxing Day Test match. And then the way he played in that innings, had that partnership with Jadeja, and the way he displayed his leadership skills as well. Of course, we're going to talk in a different segment on what the future holds as far as Indian Test captaincy is concerned. But just to rally around the boys and get the best out of them, make everyone feel at ease, and announce your intentions as well. I think many people conveniently forget his 22 run knock in that final innings at the Gabba because Shubman had got out at that point of time and we were still dilly dallying. And at least the viewers who were watching the match were in a quandary whether India were going to go for the target or not. But all of that was thrown out of the window once Ajinkya came out to bat and he started playing positively. Never mind he got out, but the intent that he showed was a statement from a captain to the opposition that we are here not to draw the game but win at the Gabba. And I think that flowed on, um, onto the youngsters later on, and it developed the feeling that if our captain is saying through his intent that we are going for the target, we'll also play in the same vein. So I think many more heroic stories to talk about: Pujara, Ashwin, Natarajan. But if you ask me top three, these were mine. Siraj, Shubman, and Ajinkya Rahane. What
Certainly,
about?
yes.
Yeah, I'd like to
You know,
know your point of view as well.
actually, yes. So I always thought this whole test series can be segregated into two: first three tests and then the last one. Nothing much to really necessarily talk about the way Adelaide went. Unfortunate run out. Kohli was in there for 100. 2020 is one calendar year where he has not gotten 100, and it's surprising. I mean, uh, of course, it was unfortunate, whatnot. Having said that, what I personally loved about this tour was the you know the discovery of Rishabh Pant. Not necessarily discovery, probably I'll say a redemption. The way he has carried himself and the way he has actually manage the situation. To be honest, I was personally pissed with Kohli because while his on-field settings and he's been fairly successful in getting 20 wickets for us, but his 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 team selection is something that has been pissing me off from quite a bit, like dropping Bhuvi back in South Africa, and so on and so forth. Similarly, I didn't necessarily want to see Saha playing the first test as well. Uh, what I always thought was, okay, the Vlad is not necessarily very good with keeping, but he had to be given time. Probably we'll go back to Parthiv Patel similarly, MS Dhoni maybe in 2004-5 as well. Of course, that's how you kind of develop your prowess. And he's played one series in Australia, one winning series in Australia and whatnot. So I was personally very unhappy with him being dropped. But having said that, 5 innings, 274 odd runs, highest run getter for India, has been lucky, definitely, but he's played his heart out under Jinx, and I'm very sure Ajinkya had a very major role to, actually go and tell him, saying that play your damn natural game. Coming to natural game, our second best batter of the team, Cheteshwar Pujara, he's our warrior. Uh, no words can actually describe the kind of probably the mental pain or even the physical pain that he has actually gone through, especially at Sydney and Gaba. Hasn't done much in the first two tests, but the way he has carried out himself in the third test and fourth test talks volumes. Uh, Point is, I'd like to slightly digress and say that we've been a bit harsh with him. You know, when Virat actually wasn't very happy with his intent and approach back in New Zealand. But the guy's plan is that he likes to see tire out players. We
Yeah,
pretty much had a winning successful formula back in 2018 with that very intent. You can't change his natural game. You can't necessarily go and if not criticize, at least be of a negative opinion out there. But there's something that I've actually thought through, and what I personally feel is Ravi Shastri and Jinx have been with him. They both have actually given him the support that perhaps he needs. Play a damn natural game. You tire out bowlers, do whatever you want to do. I mean, we did the very same thing back in Sydney as well when Rishabh Pant got a 159 the last time around in 2018. Uh, you know, Pujara holds ground and Pant does wonders, and same goes with this time around as well, wherein uh, Pujara has been taking the blows. Gill has been very positive, at least with at the Gaba, and then of course the Rishabh Pant blitzkrieg. So I personally think, of course, in addition to what the three players that you absolutely suggested, and which I totally agree with as well, Rishabh Pant, I'm a fanboy of his for probably from 4 to 5 years. I've been following his domestic work as well. And I think it's a no-brainer. I think, see, the guy has to improve. If he needs to improve his keeping skill, he needs to get more time. He's replacing MS Dhoni in limited overs. Not necessarily very easy, to actually fill in those shoes, but he needs
yeah.
time. He's just about 23, 24, and we're actually in for a very long career from him. I won't be surprised if he'll be the highest test run getter as a keeper, of course, at
Yeah.
least in terms of the red ball cricket. Limited overs, of course, we're looking at 11,000 runs, which is not very easy. But short term goals, Rishabh Pant is here to stay, and he's going to surprise. And we're going to see that in the Chennai Test as well, wherein he's going to sweep Dom Best and Jack Leach into the yellow stands. No, no two ways there. I'm being overconfident, but I just would love to see him perform well. Yeah,
Right.
that's pretty much it. That's how I see it.
All right. I think that pretty much sums it up. There have been multiple heroes, and not to forget the support staff and the physios and the masseurs that we had in the team that made sure that we have a fit 11 out there in the park. So I think whatever we have discussed is good enough for our first segment of the review of the Aussie Tour, Ravi. Thank you very much for your time today. It's been a wonderful discussion. And of course, we are soon going to post this podcast on our YouTube platform and share it with the general public who will be free to put in their comments and voice their opinions and also give us feedback, as we are pretty much greenhorns as far as podcast is concerned. With this, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of the first episode of this cricket podcast with Pavan and Ravi. We are, of course, wanting to give a full name of to our podcast, which we'll be doing soon. But for now, let us call this as Cricket Podcast with Ravi and Pavan. Thank you very much, Ravi, again for your time today. And we should speak soon and come up with the next segment, which will be the final segment related to the review of the Aussie Tour, and then move on to the England series from there on.
Sure, Pawan Bhaiya. See you soon. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thank you.